Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to 33 Founders. I'm really excited you're joining us today because I'm here with the co-founders of Movable Ink. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael and Vivek.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Can we start out with you just explaining what Agile email marketing is and how Movable Ink is empowering brands to connect with their customers?
Yeah, definitely. And to kind of explain this, I'll decouple what the product is from where we think the marketing industry is heading. And so the idea around agile email marketing, and this is a principle borrowed from development teams that move very nimbly and to a goal that might be changing pretty quickly. So the idea is that marketers could be faster, smarter, and more measurable when they're running their email campaigns. And we've all seen this when we've worked with a number of companies, brands like Macy's, brands like Airbnb. So whether they are technology companies or huge retailers, usually email market departments are understaffed and under-resourced. So how can we help them spend less time kind of working with technology, and how can we remove those friction points so they are allowed to be more creative and they're able to see more of their creative ideas and release these out to the world? So that's the faster component. Smarter content means you really have to follow your customer today, who's always on the move. They're on their iPhone in the morning on the way to work. They're checking their desktop at lunch when they're shopping on Guilt. They're reclining on a sofa on their tablet in the evening. So they're moving different places to different times to different devices to be able to deliver the perfect message wherever and whenever they are. And lastly, a greater deal of measurability. So going really far beyond vanity metrics like opens and clicks to understanding business goals like revenue per email, lifetime value, average order value, and helping marketers do a much better job making sure that their creative ideas are helping support that goal.
Great. So can we start out with something simple? Can you tell me, both of you, what the best email you've ever received is? From a brand, not just like a personal email.
So this is one I wish we could take credit for, and I just received yesterday. So a couple of weeks ago, I signed up for a Jib Jab to kind of put together this birthday video with a few heads from our office. I think 5 people were sharing a birthday, and that was a big hit. And then just yesterday, I got an email from Jib Jab for a Halloween-themed video I could make, reusing some of the headshots that I'd uploaded for a former thing. So it was completely surprising to me. It was very personalized, and it's something I had to forward around the office.
How about you, Michael?
We recently worked with Airbnb on a campaign that they were sending out emails that showed like a note from the host that included your name in it with a little animation.
I saw that with
really
the cookies,
well done.
right?
Yes.
It's awesome. You guys did a great job with that. What do you guys think is
you.
the biggest misconception about email marketing today? Because like you said, it's no longer about, oh, they opened it on their computer, we got them.
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that people don't email anymore or they don't use it. The single most popular application on mobile phones is email. It's the first thing you're checking in the morning. It's an implicit social network. It's not a walled garden like Facebook or Twitter or something with its own very confining rules. It's effective. Every marketer who looks at all of the digital channels available to them, email is a thing. It's pretty foundational that is a part of their marketing mix, and they think carefully about when they're trying to build a list and retain them and get you to come back and engage with that brand again.
Absolutely, and I know you guys have special analytics tools in your platform to help people monitor what's working and what's not, and you even have an algorithm that notices if something's working and pushes it out more. How long should companies test new features in newsletters?
Well, I'll tee something up for Michael. So we actually are believers in starting simple. So when you get a piece of technology, it's very enticing to want to do everything under the sun and start throwing bells and whistles and what's going to stick and trying lots of random things. I think it's good to have a hypothesis about what's going to be effective. And if you're Airbnb, a personal message feels very relevant to you and it feels very on brand. If you're a bricks and mortar store, maybe one element to drive someone to shop offline, especially with the launch Pay now, possibly redeem a coupon through Apple Pay at a local merchant. So try to do one thing and try to really nail that. And you have a baseline then to do more experiments and try to be more ambitious with your marketing program. So with that, that's a simple idea. I think we've done some vastly complex things, some very sophisticated things that integrate into back-end systems. I don't know, Michael, do you have ideas of something interesting we've done?
Yeah, and to answer your original question, how long should they test? I think it actually kind of depends on the statistical significance. So sometimes a test will be very wildly successful or not, and very quickly you can say, okay, this worked and it didn't show me the best option. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer, but our tools are a bit able to actually figure out how long that should be. So it's not really something that you have to set in advance.
Perfect. What do you think is the best way to manage multiple features in a newsletter? Because when I was researching your platform, I was so excited about being able to include a weather widget and a timeline and a social share button. How many is too many? When do you have to pull back a little bit?
I think it depends. I think you do, again, to that point about having a hypothesis, you don't want to distract away from a core call to action. I think you as a business sort of need to identify what's this email really about? Is it about educating the buyer? Every single transaction shouldn't be give me money, I need to sell you something. Some of our most successful clients have actually done really well. Finish Line is one example. Sending you really useful content, and there's local athletic events, Tough Mudders, Spartan races, things like that, and they're not going for the hard sell on every single communication. It's genuinely valuable to their customers, and then occasionally when they have permission, they might slip in an offer for a new pair of sneakers to go train for something. So I think that balance and really understanding your customer and finding the right cadence is the right approach, and frankly will start to give email marketers a better reputation.
On the note of content, Vivek, I think it's difficult when you have a content startup, especially if you have a lot of content, to know what to send. What's your best advice for a content startup to scale in a way that, like you said, doesn't feel so salesy? You're always pushing your content on someone.
Well, there's a few emails that I get that are content-centric. The emails I get from Quora are fantastic. They seem to really know exactly what, and they always seem to get me to click. Business Insider does some great emails as well. Gets me to engage about topics that I'm reading about. So I think there's a difference between a content company and a commerce company. And content companies genuinely have to have something compelling for you to go visit their website, and it's an ad-supported revenue model. So it's in their best interest to give you something that you engage with in that form. For commerce companies, it's striking that balance between transactional and content. And if you can tell a story, that's the most powerful thing. Rather than just putting a product out there, thinking about a big marketing event, how do you tie this into Halloween, or how do you tie it into something else that's happening, perhaps Apple making a big announcement, and create a really interesting narrative. So there's a technology side of this, certainly, but I think marketers have to start being a little more creative as well about their approach and building something that delights their customers.
Something you guys have spoken a lot about lately, too, is preparing your email newsletter for the holiday. And being on the receiving end of a lot of email newsletters, I never thought that anyone would think of preparing it for the holidays. What's your best advice for startups and companies to prepare their newsletters for this season?
I think it kind of depends exactly what sort of company that you are, but a lot of companies, obviously, the holidays are a very important time for retail, for instance. Trying to catch the user in the right context and tailor your message towards that context. For instance, if you're at work before the holidays, you might have a different message than if you're sending an email to someone on Thanksgiving Day. They're thinking about that in a different context than they may be when they're in other locations.
So timing for the holidays is really important then. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, timing, making it easy to point out perhaps local stores if you have to make a return, where that person can do that. We've used time-based promotions to create a sense of urgency. We've done personalized content, so a piece of jewelry that you're getting with your name on it that looks like it's been engraved on it. These things resonate and they feel very unique and personal to you. And that's the kind of experience you want to create, where it feels like walking into a boutique on Madison Avenue and that sales associate totally knows you based upon all of these signals she might be reading. And how do you create that experience for millions of people for a big holiday send?
Perfect. So one of the best things I've noticed in an email I receive is at the end of Jason Calacanis' launch ticker, he says, "Pro tip, share this with a friend and they'll love you for life." What do you think, in addition to share buttons, is a great way to have people forward an email to their friends or their family?
Yeah, there's this idea of dark social, which a lot of people aren't familiar with that term, but apparently email and some other media that are harder to track, there's far more sharing of content that happens more than all of other social media combined, including Facebook and Twitter, et cetera. I'm trying to remember the study. I think it was a McKinsey study that did this, and perhaps 70% of shares are happening outside of what you would traditionally define as social media. So emails are getting forwarded. I'm sending stuff to my mom. Hey, this might be pretty interesting. You should take a look at it. Create great content. And it'll get shared. Sometimes if there's a promotion that you can say, buy one and get a friend to participate to, both of you get a discount, that can be compelling. But the fundamentals of it haven't changed in 100 years, which is create something people will love and they will share it.
I like it. So I want to shift gears for a few minutes and talk about the journey. Before we got started on the interview, we were discussing your guys' pivot from solely working with startups to working with larger enterprise companies. What was it like when you realized, hey, we've been doing this 2 years, but we have to pivot? Because it can be difficult sometimes to leave what you've been doing and just start on uncharted path.
Yeah, it wasn't our first pivot. So do you want to share the first company we actually started?
Sure. So originally, when we had kind of come together to build something, it was actually based around this idea of recommendations for products on retailers' websites to sell related products in a combined shop cart that would provide a really seamless user experience. And we worked on that for 4 or 5 months, kind of proving out this hypothesis that we had. And we basically proved that the hypothesis was incorrect, but we learned a lot in the process. And as kind of part of that learning process, we started thinking more about email and about how we could make email more relevant. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
And the original product had nothing to do with email, so this was it was almost a reboot, not even a pivot. So we came up with this idea for Movable Ink. Michael had come up with an interesting way of changing content in email dynamically, and I was extremely excited. I was up till 3 or 4 a.m. Writing down all of the different things you could do with this if this were possible. And I think we spent the next year really trying to figure out how to go to market. We talked to everyone on the planet. I talked to VCs who passed on investing in us on the original idea, got introductions into Daily Candy, talked to ThrillList, talked to lots of New York startups. And the signals we got were very positive. People were genuinely excited about this. So it was strange to us that in the first year, there was all this excitement, but we couldn't really get anyone to commit real dollars to using the platform. And it wasn't until we got our first enterprise, maybe a Fortune 500 type of company, I think it was Electronic Arts, that we realized that this was a very new kind of technology. There was a cost of education. The team that we're selling to needed the resources and the time to be able to invest in this. And we had to give them some ideas about what they could do with it. And until we started selling to enterprises, we went from $200 a month in revenue 3 years ago to closing a $6,000 pilot, to getting a $12,000 pilot, to closing a $72,000 deal. We said, wait a second, we're focusing in the wrong area, the right product. We're just selling it to the wrong people. And from that point forward, we exclusively focused on larger businesses, and the business just started rocketing up.
The startups that we were talking to oftentimes didn't even have anybody focused on email. It might be somebody's part-time job to do that. And so they were just lucky to even get emails out. They weren't thinking deeply about how they could make them really good. whereas larger companies often had whole teams whose focus was on their email, and so that was a much better place to focus.
How did you lead the team during the pivot? How do you communicate the changing of ideas?
Well, Michael and I talked to one another, and we had a third co-founder who didn't fully understand what we were trying to do with the new product, and left the team, which was pretty hard on us. We really liked him and wanted him to stay. So it's like one of those moments where I think the entire business would have collapsed, never would have even gotten off the ground if we had decided, hey, we're not quite sure, or I need, let me go take a job that's a little more steady, or I can get a paycheck. And it was a little bit of a leap of faith in that early moment. And then I think that the early team that we had, they were on board to go do something really incredible. And we'd raised a small seed round, which helps to actually be able to pay small salaries. But I think they relished the fact that it was us as the challenger kind of attacking this big market and trying to prove ourselves. And we had the right team. We had people really motivated in doing something big. And I think we ended 2012 with 5 people in the company, and today we've got 72 people in the company. So the people change. It's a team sport. We couldn't be here without having really sharp people, talented people who we all understand the vision, we all understand where we're going, and work really hard to make that a reality.
What was one of the best ways, Vivek, as CEO, that you've maintained that culture, that underdog mentality, going from 5 people to now 72, not even 2 years later?
I think it's the awareness that there's always someone bigger, badder, better than you out there. And who we compare ourselves to, we keep raising the bar on ourselves. And while we were the attacker, we were doing sort of missionary sales early, and there were people didn't necessarily believe that this was a real category or a need for our sort of tool. So it was a different type of environment. And we used to do stand-up meetings at General Assembly, a five-person team in the coat room of General Assembly because there was no room anywhere else. And today, there's a different sort of challenge where it's coordinating a group of very talented, 70 very talented people, and making sure everyone feels inspired and motivated, and that their part in this is instrumental. And it's that's the biggest thing. And there's some big players out there like Adobe, like Salesforce, like SAP, that we sort of look to as these incredibly successful enterprise software companies, and we have a lot of room to grow. That if you look in a very small kind of an early startup space, we've been pretty successful. But if you compare yourself to the giants, that's our motivator to say, hey, we could be the next epic enterprise software company here in New York.
So how do you have the team members each have that ownership mentality that you were referring to?
Yeah, so a big investment and thought has to be put into, it isn't spoken of enough, but a great management team, and also a culture that rewards people for being accountable, for sort of owning their piece of the business. And so this is a learning process. This is something that's constantly evolving. But when you're a 20-person company, that looks very different. The culture is far flatter. But even as we have grown and we've started to have a management team, really everyone, I talk to engineers, I talk to individual salespeople. Michael goes on sales calls. We try to have a culture of transparency and knowledge sharing across the board, and that's partly just what we encourage as a team and what's worked for us, and partly some of the tools we use, tools like Slack that make it easy even for a field employee to know what's happening at headquarters.
Right. There are lots of salespeople that I have talked to way more on Slack than in real life or on the phone even.
How about for you, Michael, as CTO? You start out with a couple of features in Movable Ink, and today you guys have a ton of features, and you're always iterating on new ones. How do you manage projects?
I think just kind of building it up from the original feature was a Twitter signature that people would put in their emails, and that was something that was kind of built over a weekend, hacked together as fast as possible so Vivek could go out and start showing it to people. And I think the development process kind of changes over time. In the beginning, it was just run as fast as possible and get features out as fast as possible. Whereas now we've got many large customers who are depending on us for their emails. And so we take a little bit more measured approach to building it. There's definitely quite a bit more QA that goes into that process than there was early on. But we still try to be nimble, accept features, feature ideas from wherever they may come from, whether it's from our internal account services or from customers or things that we come up with, and try to still move the product as fast as possible while keeping our customers in mind.
What's your best advice for a CTO to really effectively communicate with their engineers?
Be very transparent, be open with them, and trust them that they need to be able to take ownership of what they're doing. So placing that trust in them, I think, goes a long way towards that.
And I think something you've done really well is also explain the context. Why are we doing this? Sort of the context in which we're building these things. So there's all these micro decisions an engineer might make during the day. And I think with sort of Michael communicating that pretty well, they have an understanding of where we're going, and they're able to, sort of adeptly make those decisions.
Right. Engineers really don't want to just be told, you need to build this next feature because that's what the business is doing. They oftentimes really want to understand why they're building it and how it fits into the larger picture.
So once they can really understand that, like you said, Vivek, they can just go ahead as they're designing and make small decisions instead of constantly having to come and say, oh, is this what you meant?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's broad strokes, right? When you're product managing and you're saying, hey, I think we should do this, and even if you have wireframes, even if you have high fidelity mock-ups, there's so many things you learn as you start to build out that feature or that product as you're pushing against the medium that informs you. And you can't necessarily go and check on the 100 tiny little decisions or you'll never get anywhere. So engineers end up really making key product decisions, and they need to be in a good position to understand context so they're making those decisions wisely.
Awesome. So you guys have had a very successful last 2 years in particular. So I want to close with your biggest dreams for the next 2 years. Where do you want Movable Ink to be in 2016?
2016. Are we public then? Yeah, I forget.
Maybe not quite, but
yeah. I think we're constantly learning and growing, and it's a very different company today than it was a year or two ago. And the challenge for us, as well as everyone who's been a part of this so far, is to think about a little bit more about process and scale, and how do I do something so someone else can understand, and how do you not just have knowledge bottled up in someone's head, how do you make it very accessible and shareable through the company? And how do we attract great talent? How do we recruit great talent and motivate them to do their best work here and support them with great training? So about 80% of my time is thinking about people now, which is very different than 3.5 years ago when I was writing the sales deck and the copy and thinking about how do we pitch this and what the product needs to be. That's the big challenge, and our success is going to be because we get that piece right.
All right, well, I told you I was going to end it, but now you got me excited as you talk about growing your team. Vivek, you said 80% of your time is focused on people. What do you look for when you're hiring?
Yeah, definitely. We look for raw smarts as a starting point. That's just sort of the entry fee to work with our team. We have a very talented team. A players like to work with A players. We look for people who not only have those smarts, but have the ability to get shit done. And if that's a salesperson, that they've been consistently hitting a quota in the past. If it's an engineer, that they ship product, that they ship solid product that is reliable and scales and elements like that. So we actually create mock scenarios where we test people when we interview them. If you're a salesperson, you're going to be pitching our product to us. If you are a consultant, you will do a mock consulting session. I know Michael and Lee do some mock engineering problems as well.
Yes, we have a rigorous engineering test that we do as well. We want to kind of see how they think as an engineer and make sure that they're able to kind of solve the problems that they're going to face here.
Yeah. So if we were to distill it down, we want people who think big, who hold themselves accountable to delivering something, and communicate very clearly. So the communication thing isn't a thing you necessarily think of early on, but you realize whether you're an engineer or a consultant or a salesperson, that ability to distill a point down to its core and communicate across the company and make sure everyone's on the same page and that we're going in the same direction becomes incredibly important. And we look for that skill regardless of what you do. And lastly, you have to have fun doing this. Otherwise, you can go work at a big company, but a startup has to make you feel like you've got a ton of ownership and you're having a lot of fun with the people that you work with, and the culture is one that we hope is one of the most enjoyable kind of opportunities people have in their career.
I love it. So now I will let you guys go, but can we close with you saying how people can get in touch with Movable Ink and start using the service?
Yep. So if you are sort of a larger company and you market to consumers, you can go to movableink.com, sign up to get a demo, and you're off to the races. We've also launched a free tool. It's fast, it's free forever, called inkbrush.com, that allows email marketers to go straight from concept to code. So you can upload a Photoshop file or an image, slice it up a little bit, and 5 or 10 minutes later, we produce fully email-compliant HTML that also happens to be completely responsive. So that painful process of spending 4 to 8 hours building emails with an engineer, that's gone away, and we've made it far easier for marketers to be creative and get their ideas out into the world.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.